Pinkie Pie's eyes shot open, her face buried in her wet pillow, stained from the tears. She quivered as she gently tried to lift herself up from the bed. She was afraid of seeing her bed soaked, covered in blood, evidence from a horrific deed she had committed, but her bed was dried, save for her tears. She gently placed a hoof onto her face, feeling the still fresh tears from her cheek. She shivered as her hair moved to the corner of her eyes, still in shock at the sights that she had seen. How could I? The vivid images of the nightmare she had just slept through came back to her mind. Horrific cries rang vividly in her ears. Her coat soaked with blood. Feeling of the slicing open of another living being. It felt so real. Pinkie shook her head viciously, trying to remove these thoughts from her head. Why am I having these dreams? She ran through her hooves through her head, trying to stop the images from what were assaulting her. For the past 2 weeks, she had been having restless nights of sleep. She was having nightmares every night. The severity of what's shown were getting worse and worse with each one. The first dream hadn't been so scary. She was just being attacked by a monster. So she shrugged it off as easily. It wasn't too different from any normal day of reality. From the monsters that were changed, one night she was attacked by a pony of death who wanted her soul for determination. Another night was a faceless slender pony whose pursuance quaked for every being. Then the next night she suffered a disease and starvation as her body began to rot, but that was denied death from the pain. She can handle those dreams. They weren't real after all. A good party with friends, and all those scary thoughts go away. She tried changing her diet for a day to see if the bad dreams would go away, and it worked for a night, but only for a night. The next night she dreamt of being a monster, one with sharp teeth and claws. She was a monster, and she had attacked and eaten herself. She still remembered that gagging taste from the dream she had left in her mouth. The next dream had her terrorizing ponies throughout Ponyville. She wrecked homes, crops, products, and lives. Then the next night she attacked each of her friends. She could feel the berserk rage of the monster as it had slashed and torn them apart discriminately. But at least it was quick and deft, and her friends didn't suffer in that dream. But the dream last night was different. It was personal. She was a monster again, but last night it was different. She was just herself. No fangs, no claws, no berserk rage, but a monster. In a dream she had captured a friend, her dearest friend, Rainbow Dash. She had taken sharp objects, and Pinkie dashed into the bathroom before emptying the contents of her stomach into the toilet, as the vivid images of what she had done in her dream flashed before her once more. She felt wrenched. How could her mind have been come from anywhere close to doing such horrible, horrific things? She loved her friends. She loved them more than the sun, than her sweets, than her parties, than its life itself, especially Rainbow Dash. Rainbow Dash was the coolest, most awesome, fun-loving pony she'd ever met. She wanted to try and hang out and have fun, or pull some pranks, or share some sweets to help throw a great party. It was Rainbow Dash who was there for her. She wiped her mouth as she groggily looked at herself in the mirror. Her mane was straight, her eyes were bloodshot with bags under her eyes. Her coat was as dull as a sickly look. She was breathing quite heavily. She looked terrible. She ran some cold water and repeatedly splashed her face with it. She really, really, really wanted to go see Rainbow Dash. She had to know if she was okay, but at the same time she couldn't do it until the memories of that dream had faded some more. And she needed to get out of Sugar Cube Corner for the day. She wouldn't be able to hold back any more of her stomach, even if she smelled a cupcake. Pinkie tried to stay in the shadows of the building as she quietly walked through Ponyville. The fresh air and warm sun weren't in any comfort today. She didn't even want to look at any pony either. Worried faces would trigger another flash of awful memories and images in her mind. She had nowhere in her mind to go. She just had to wander and had to get away from Sugar Cube Corner, from her room, from anything that would remind her. She then looked up and looked around. She had lost track of how much time had passed since she started her little trick, thankful that no one had stopped to ask her why she was acting so differently. She knew that the other ponies had started to notice dips in her cheerlessness. Ever since the dreams, she had been throwing more parties than ever before. But more and more weren't enough, though. Twilight had even asked her if something was the matter, and she did her best to reassure her friend. Wait, Twilight! Twilight was a great magical pony. If any pony could figure out a way to stop these dreams, she did. She winced at the idea of having to tell Twilight about the horrific things in her mind had imagined about her and her friends. But maybe she wouldn't have to. Twilight might find a solution without having to know what the dreams were of. She picked up her pace and ran straight for the library. It didn't take her long. She figured her body must have been taken here by instinct, and she did have a funny way of working that way. She then ran towards the door and knocked a little frantically. It didn't take long for the door to creak open. "Oh, hey, Pinkie Pie," Twilight said, surprised to see her friend. "Is this an invitation to a party again?" Twilight stopped as she blinked, noticing how distressed her friend looked. "Are you all right, Pinkie? You don't look so good." No, I'm not good, Twilight. Can I come in?" Pinkie said, minding her manners for once. "Of course, Pinkie, please. Make yourself at home," Twilight said, quickly offering her friend the hospitality. "Thank you," Pinkie said, as she quietly trotted to the house. She quickly headed for the table in the corner of the room, sitting on one of the red velvet pillows before it. She rested her head on the table, closing her eyes as she took a soft sigh and tried to relax, remembering the friend's favorite hot beverage. "Can I get you something to drink? Perhaps some hot chocolate?" Twilight said. "No sweets, please. I'll have some coffee, that'd be great. No cream or sugar," Pinkie softly groaned. "No sweets?" Twilight said in shock. "Oh my, this is really serious," she then said as she quickly prepared her friend the hot drink as she requested. She levitated before it, Pinkie, who groggily took it and began to drink. She grimaced at the bitter taste. "Pinkie, what's the matter? You could tell me," Twilight said, sitting down, right next to her downcast friend. Twilight could see the signs. Her mane was straight, her coat was dull, her eyes were bloodshot with bags under them, and most noticeable of all, she wasn't even irradiating the energetic aurora of Pinkie Pie. "Oh, Twilight, it's awful." Pinkie then put her hooves in her head. "It's the most awful thing that's ever happened to me, and I can't even believe what's happening to me. It's so awful. I can't sleep. I can't rest. Even parties aren't helping. I need relief. I need to stop this, but everything I've tried only seems to make it worse," Pinkie said through her voice was quivering. Twilight couldn't help but be surprised at how terrified her friend sounded. "Pinkie, tell me, what exactly this awful thing has happened?" Twilight tried to reassure Pinkie that everything would be all right. Pinkie took a deep breath, steeling her nerves. "I've been having nightmares, Twilight," Pinkie finally said. "Horrible, awful nightmares. Relentless nightmares. I was throwing more parties to forget them, but they kept coming. I tried changing my diet. I tried relaxing before bed. I even tried falling asleep in a handstand with a lemon in my mouth while in the shower. Nothing works. Last night's nightmare was worst of all." "Nightmares?" Twilight asked, tapping her chin for a moment. "1 second," she said. She got up quickly and ran over to her bookshelf and began to pull out the books, checking them out, scanning them one by one. No, not you. You're not right either." It took about 10 minutes before Twilight had finally pulled out a book and it looked satisfied. "Aha!" she said, as she trotted back to the table, opening the book and flipping through the pages quickly. "Nightmares," Twilight began, after having to stop on a specific page. "A dream of a strong negative emotions. A common occurrence that most ponies will experience, however. If the nightmare should persist or become more terrifying with each episode, it could be for several reasons. External forces such as medication or diet, which we've already ruled out," Twilight added with the addendum. "External stress from recent physical or mental events, or caused by a psychological event during the time in the pony's life, has deep impact. There were several ways to determine what kind of nightmare is being experienced, and what's the best manner for treating them are," Twilight said, before silently reading the next part. "So that book can help me stop the nightmares?" Pinkie asked, hoping to raise in her heart. "Looks like that way. Of course it could stop you from having the nightmares for the rest of your life, though. They are a normal part of sleep." but it can help you with the constant nightmare issue, she said, still reading. There's a spell in here that let me look in your mind to see the memories of your dreams. That way, I could see what you have been dreaming about and apply the proper spell to try and help. The hope had risen within Pinkie in her gut to be like bloweder than a lake. No, Princess Twilight, Pinkie said, shaking her head fiercely. You can't see my dreams. They are... Pinkie covered her face in her hooves. They're too horrible, Twilight. I don't want any pony to see what I have seen. Her voice was trembling. Tears were threatening to leave her eyes once more. She looked up when she felt Twilight's hoof placed on her shoulder, with a look of concern in her eyes. I can't imagine what kind of dreams you have been having, Pinkie, but I could see the pain in your face. It's affecting of who you are. I just can't let this go. You come for me for help, and I'm going to help you. Please, you have to let me see what you've seen so I can help, Twilight pleaded her friend. Pinkie lowered her head as she held back the tears, burning at her eyes with all of her might. Swallowing as hard as she knew her friend wanted to help make things better, might have had no power to do so. Twilight, Pinkie muttered in a hushed breath, holding back a sob. Yes, what is it, Pinkie? Twilight asked in a similar hushed voice. Please, you have to promise me what you're about to see won't change your opinion of me. Pinkie sniffled deeply. I swear, Pinkie, I won't think of you as anything different but a dear friend I know and love, Twilight said. Pinkie saw her smile was so reassuring, yet so comforting. Pinkie Pie swear? Pinkie asked one last time. Twilight just seemed to smile and a little amused. Cross my heart, hope to stick a cupcake in my eye. Twilight did the emotions of Pinkie Pie swear, mimicking the sticking of the pastry in her face. Pinkie then took a moment to let it sink in, then squeezed her eyes shut, lowered her head a little. All right, I trust you, Twilight, Pinkie Pie muttered softly, as she did her best to prepare for whatever was going to happen next. Twilight nodded softly as she remembered the spell from her book, her horn glowing with the light as she was concentrated. She gently swiftly her hair, covering Pinkie's forehead, behind her ear to hold it, then gently tapped into the tip of the horn against Pinkie's skull. Leave me alone! The slender pony approaches regardless. The static screeched as it drove closer. Pain shocked through her body from one side to the other, as blood seemed to splatter all around the cloud, vision turning the world red. She felt her knees, trying to grasp the reality. Before the pain and the sound became too much to bear, there was a hole in her body. She could feel the worms wriggling in it, crawling up her torso. They were eating her alive. The pain crawled into her very soul, but then, yet, death would not come. Her body lay there unflinching as the insects had their way, feeling every wriggle and slime of their bodies as it slid under her skin. Bones crunched as her teeth as blood splattered from her chin. The fresh taste of gooey flesh slid down her throat. Sharp teeth bored down again into the side of the earth pony's neck, as the pony's head fell from her body, giving a good chunk of flesh to chew. The taste was revolting, but she craved it. She had to have it. She had to have more. Her teeth dug into the pony's skull, crushing the skull as the inner organs began to dribble in her mouth. She had to have more. This one would never be enough. The screams had died down, but wouldn't last long. Why? Why are you doing this? It was the pained pony of a frantic cry of Rainbow Dash. She could see her tied down on a table, wings already shone off to her own by her own hooves. Oh, Rainbow Dash, every pony dies sometimes. Her voice betrayed her as she pulled out a scalpel. It's a very simple concept, really. You just have to think. Did my life mean anything? Did I die with a purpose? Will my memory be left when I'm gone? All the important questions you see. She then walked over towards Rainbow Dash, as she could already feel the murderous intent grasping at every fiber of her being. But Rainbow Dash hiccuped through the pain and tears. I won't have died for a good purpose if you kill me, Rainbow sobbed. How could you do this to me? She raised her hoof and petted Rainbow Dash's face. She leaned in closer, and there was an attraction she could never describe having been felt before. Her breath was hot, and her body betrayed her mind. Oh, Rainbow Dash, If you don't know the reason by now, you'll never understand. This is just how things have to be. She stepped back from her prisoner. Rainbow only looked confused, but she had to rectify on that look. She gripped her scalpel and placed it at the base of Rainbow's hip, then sliced down her leg. Pain overtook Rainbow's face as her voice began to disclate, slicing her operation. After all, she had to prepare for the ingredients just to be right. Twilight stumbled back, with her head kicked back instinctively, wanting to escape from the horrors inside of Pinky's mind. Twilight crashed into the bookcase, causing a cascade of the books to fall onto her. She was breathing heavily, frantic and panicked. The spell had only taken a few seconds to complete, but the rush of the dream, all the memories flooded at once. Those dreams were horrific, and so real. She had everything felt in those dreams, even though those dreams should not normally contain such vivid feelings. The monster that attacked her, the feel of the bugs crawling throughout her skin and organs, the gagging of the taste of flesh in her throat, the torture, the acts that she had committed, she wanted to vomit. Twilight? Came a scared, timid, almost hushed voice. Twilight escaped from her fox and looked up at her pink friend. She was trembling with fear as tears steamed down her face. That was right. The dreams that were Pinky was having. The dreams that were terrifying her dreams that she had come to her for help with. Pinky, Twilight said, finally muttered, swallowing back her own emotions in her stomach contents. I had no idea, she said, shakily getting to her feet and slowly walking back to her friend. She had to be strong right now. Twilight, Pinky sniffled for her sobs. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry you saw them. She closed her eyes, gasping for the air for her sobs. Twilight quickly moved next to Pinky, taking her into an embrace to hold her tight. Pinky cried desperately into Twilight's shoulder, and Twilight had held her dear friend, making sure that she knew with all of her support, the images may have had her stomach twist, but her friend was more important than that. It's okay, Pinky, Twilight said, once Pinky's sobs started to calm down. I could see how much these dreams that have been eating you. The Pinky in those dreams is not you, so we must figure it out why you're having them, Pinky said, letting her friend know dearly that she had in fact kept her promise. The Pinky in her arms was nothing like the Pinky that appeared in the dreams. Pinky slowly nodded her head in agreement, before finally able to stop her tears and let go of Twilight. Twilight then returned to her book and flipped a few pages. Since we know it's not your diet, we need to determine if it's because of the recent events, or something much deeper in your psyche. So let's start here. When did these dreams started happening? Well, Pinky rubbed her face, trying to dry it some. The dreams started about a few days after the Grand Galloping Gala, and they've been happening about every night for the last 2 weeks. They didn't really happen one night after I changed my diet, but then they just came back the next day, Pinky said, trying to recall of how often she had them. Well, the gala was a pretty big incident, and you certainly seemed fine at the donut shop, but what about after that? I know you did say you had some business to attend to before you head back to Ponyville, so we didn't see you again till you were heading to Charlotte. Twilight wondered. Well, after I spent time with you guys, I went and met with my sister Octavia. She was done playing some cello on stage during the gala. She was the main reason I was able to get away from the music antics. While there, I wanted to go thank her for helping me to liven things up. Pinky said recalling the night. She was a little mad at me first for the mess I have caused, but she forgave me and we ended up having a fun chat. And about what have both been since the farm. After a little while, it was time for me to go, so we promised to keep in touch. Twilight pondered this. Do you think it was because me with your sister could have started the dreams? Twilight asked curiously. I don't understand, Dad, if she did, Pinky said, putting a hoof through her chin, though. We did have fun that night. There wasn't anything that she said was negative. Have you gotten a letter from her yet? I did get one, but it was just letting me know that she was going to be performing a concert in Philadelphia, she then said, as her band was touring around, and if I wanted to send her letters, I'd have to address them to her band, since the all-mail carrier is where they'll be, Pinky said, tilting her head in thought. Again, there was nothing negative, though. Well, what about the last 2 weeks, huh? You seem pretty much fine, other than the few instances where you weren't as a chipper, Twilight said, remembering that Pinkie was a little less hyper than usual the last few days. She could certainly understand why, though. No, nothing significant. I've been throwing more parties because of the dreams, but it's been because life as usual in Ponyville, Twilight said, shaking her head slowly. I see. Twilight then went back to consulting her books, scanning the pages of the books, flipping through some more, looking for what seemed to be best to handle this. Here we are. It's another spell. This one's a bit more of a mind delve. It's an intention to find the source of your problems, though. It'll let us find out why you're having these dreams. It may be a minor or a major reason, Twilight said confidently. So don't worry, Pinkie. I'm going to make sure you'll be all better in no time. She gave her friend a little confident smile. Thank you, Twilight, Pinkie said, giving a soft smile back. All right. The book says that the spell can be a little disorientating at first, but you'll get used to it. You ready? Twilight asked. Pinkie gave her a nod. Here goes nothing, Twilight said, taking a deep breath as she concentrated once more, her horn flaring up with light. She lowered it down towards Pinkie's forehead once more and gently touched her. Pinkie's mind did flip a little, like if she fell into a hazy fog, but she then lost track of her surroundings, as it felt as if she was falling from a very far height. The world was spinning around her, as if she felt like the wind was rushing past her. Her stomach was rolling inside as she was inside of an intense feeling. She wondered just as how long as she was going to feel this way, when she finally felt the world stabilizing with a thud that knocked the wind out of her. She gasped for breath, coughing a little bit, before feeling the sensation of the ground beneath her. She lifted her head and looked up, shook it lightly, before opening her eyes. She was still in the library, that's for sure, but Twilight was missing. Why would she have left her alone in the library? Twilight, she called out, but the only thing that came back was a hollow cello. It was very bizarre, and the library seemed quiet, even more than when Twilight wasn't around. She looked into the table, noticing 2 things on it, a bag and a note. She carefully read the letters on the note. You must cross the darkness to see the light. Pinkie looked into the piece of paper a little confused. Did Twilight write this? If she did, what does it mean? Was she supposed to take this bag with her? Twilight must know what she was doing after all. She wouldn't just abandon her without a good reason, though. Pinkie opened the bag and looked to see if there was anything inside it. There were 2 things inside. The first one was obvious as it was, a lantern. Inside of it was an oil with a wick, and there was a knob on the side. She assumed that it would turn the lantern on. If she was going to use it, she would have to make sure not to use up all the oil. She gently placed the lantern back in the bag. What's this? She asked. She pulled out the rectangular device, and it had a dial and an antenna. But it wasn't an object that she was familiar with. It had a face like a picture on it, with a circle that the handholds, and her mind in it, it looked more like a miniature phonograph. But how would this tiny thing play music? As her hoof began to spring into life, it played a soft static sound. Pinkie dropped it, surprised by the sudden sound. She stared at it as it buzzed. The only sound what seemed to be a bunch of bees being mixed through the DJ table. She poked through the device with her hoof. After a few moments of buzzing stopped, Pinkie looked confused, but she had the gut instinct that something must be important. She placed it back in the bag. I guess Twilight believed I'll need this bag. I'll keep the advice then, Pinkie muttered to herself as she carefully strapped the bag onto her back. Then she looked around. The library seemed to hold no more clues for the moment, so she decided to step outside. She felt more comfortable now that she had visited Twilight, so maybe she could go visit Rainbow Dash now. Huh? Pinkie said, stopping at the short of the few feet outside the door. A thick fog had fallen around Ponyville. It was so thick that she couldn't even see the buildings next to the library. She had to get close to the building if she wanted to see one. Then she started to shiver as the wind blew by. The temperature had fallen to a significant amount. What's going on? I've never seen this kind of weather in Ponyville before, she said, confused. Did Rainbow Dash do this? Why would she? Pinkie then knew she had to find Rainbow Dash and talk to her now. She quickly began to run off in the direction she knew Rainbow's house would be. She was in full gallop, when she suddenly realized that she had to come to a full stop. She skidded around the ground and stopped along the edge, a few pebbles getting kicked loose, falling in front of her. There was a gigantic chasm that had never been in Ponyville right before her. It then cut right down to the road, Rainbow's house. The fact that it was cut off the entire way outside of Ponyville, if you didn't have wings. "What's going on?" she asked as she stared into what seemed to be a bottomless pit.